Testing 1, 2. Okay, see how you see that green line? Yep.
Good evening. I'm Councilwoman Joanne Ryan. I'm calling the Committee on Finance public hearing to order. It is 5:16 on Monday, October 17, 2022. Madam Clerk, before I start, has everybody that wants to speak for item 1 signed our sheets, our testimony sheets at the front of the room on Hive, on the first matter that's before us? Okay, Sergeant, could you please bring the sheets to me to the rostrum for item 1? Madam Clerk, could you kindly read item 1 into the record?
An ordinance and amendment of ordinance number 2019-55, number 541, approved December 13, 2019. An ordinance establishing a tax stabilization agreement for Westminster Partners LLC located on Assessor's Plat 20, Lot 409, 203 Westminster Street.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Before we begin, I would like to recognize our solicitor, Ken Cheverini, is with us this evening. We have our council president, John Egliosi, with us, and of course, members of the finance team, Vice Chair Carmen Castillo, Senior Deputy Majority Leader Nick Narducci. We have James Taylor, Councilman Taylor. We have Councilman Espinal, Pro Tempore Espinal, Deputy Majority Leader Harris, Councilman Vargas, Councilwoman Kerwin. Oh, committee member Helen Anthony is also with us this evening. And Councilman Goncalves is with us. I believe, is Smiley in here? And we also have Mayor-elect Brett Smiley with us. Thank you. Okay, let's call the first speaker, Council President John Egliosi, on item 1, please. You have 2 minutes to speak, and where is he? Did you want to speak on item 1? You're signed up. Very sorry. I need the Hive up here, the folks from Hive to begin the meeting. I apologize. Please come to the podium. Identify yourself for the record, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gordon Bust. I'm here from Abdo Development representing the Hive Life project. I have my colleague with me here, Taylor Bell, as well.
And you have some presentations, some posters you'd like to put up, please?
Yes,
Yep,
please.
please go right ahead and put them up.
It's okay with council, I can run through them.
Please,
All set?
you're all set.
Okay. Well, thanks again for having me. I want to thank the council and the finance committee for their support in the past for our TSA for the Hive Life. This is now going to be apartments, and I'll explain that here. This is 203 Westminster Street, so just across the street. Again, thank you for having me, and I thank you for the support in the past. So,
Could you speak up a little, please, into the mic? Thank you.
sure, is that helpful?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so our property is at 203 Westminster Street. It's locally known here as the Projo Building and the Kresge Building for its prior uses, which date back many decades now. It has been vacant, both buildings, for approximately 15 years. We came into Providence in late 2018, had a TSA that was approved at the end of 2019. That original TSA was for a hotel project called Hotel Hive. It had about 150 hotel rooms and about 30,000 square feet of retail. We ran into the COVID-19 crisis, and that changed the landscape for everything around the world, and especially for hotels. So the result of that was a delay to our project. We were ready to go at the end of 2019 there, and then ran into delays due to the market changes. What's happened over time is we realized that the hotel financing market was not going to return anytime soon, and we wanted to stay committed to the project and move it forward. So we have shifted on the hotel to create an apartment building here. retaining the retail component. So the building's about 132,000 gross square feet combined. And of that, we are going to do 124 residential apartments and retain the approximate 29,000 square feet of retail. As you can see, these are existing conditions. On the left is the Projo building. On the right is the Kresge building. It's a little hard to tell from far away, but you can see the deterioration of the building even in the last few years. There's rust stains. The facade is really chipping and falling apart as we speak. The next slide is another exterior shot, again on the Projo side. And if you were to look at it close up again, you can see the rust stains, the glass deteriorating, the roof deteriorating. On the right, you can see where the window wraps are now just exposed wood where the metal is completely fallen off. So I moved to the interior of the building. You can see this was demolished on the interior many years before we even were involved. It's deteriorating, dilapidated, has a little bit of an environmental on some of the tile work. So in obviously very bad shape. Another shot here, you can see further just current conditions of the building with a lot of debris, beams, metal, masonry sitting around. What we would like to do is convert it to what we're calling a hive life, which again is 124 residential apartments with 29,000 square feet of retail. We will restore the entire facade, the roof, repair and replace glassware as needed. We will also bring in both below grade, street level retail, as well as rooftop retail, and then everything in between will be residential rental apartments. What you're seeing here is the ground floor plate. Again, for those further out, I'll just explain around the perimeter of the building is all going to be activated retail. So we really hope to reduce the vagrancy and the livelihood of the city and close down what right now is really just, a gap in what is otherwise nice Westminster street. So along the front, we are planning on having some fast casual in the form of potentially a pizza restaurant, also cafes, maybe mixed with some co-work. We'll have our residential lobby entrances as well as a large retail tenant in what's the Kresge building right now. Moving forward, I have what is a typical floor plate. These are predominantly studio and one-bedroom units, some one-bedroom dens, and we are adding a new light well between our neighbor on the 1/3 of the block there to create some light so we can have residential apartments all the way through. There will be an exercise facility in there for their tenants. There will be bike parking, and there'll be a limited amount of garage parking below. The cross section, I won't spend a lot of time on it other than to say on the right is your Kresge. You can see below grade there where we'll have the retail that I talked about. We're looking at a lounge down there for beverage. Then moving up above that, you're at first floor of the retail I just went through, and everything above that is residential until you get to the roof, which is about a 2,500 square foot enclosed roof deck. They'll be run by the retail operators of the below grade space, as well as about 2,200 square feet of an outside rooftop terrace area that can be both used for residents as well as the public. And so now you're seeing the rooftop level here. We will have 2 elevators that access that area for the enclosed component. This will be, again, regulated by the retail, so there will be security from going through the residential there. And so those are the various pictures of the project. I touched on the need for the change from hotel to apartment. The building currently is assessed at about $3.9 million. That creates over 20 years, about $2.8 million in real estate taxes for the city. Under our proposed program, the valuation on a real estate basis by the assessor will go up about 4.5 times. So our real estate taxes over 20 years will increase to about $7.5 million from the $2.8 million that you're currently receiving. Went over the number of residential units. The unit sizes will be approximately starting at 300 square feet, going up to about 540 square feet. The rents will start at about $1,100 a month for the residential apartments. The average rents will be about $1,800 a month throughout the building. Obviously, the reason we want the TSA and need the TSA is to make the project financially viable for a senior lender. And we believe the change to apartments along with the TSA will allow that to happen. Our goal is to start construction in the first half of next year, hopefully on the earlier side. We are looking to finalize the financing, hopefully right about the year end, which we would then, once we start construction, it'll be approximately 18 to 24 months till we get C of O. And we will be submitting for building permits, assuming we get the approval on the TSA amendment here, changing the start date from 2019 to 2022. And those permit costs to the city will be about $420,000, which includes fire department review fee. And in addition to that, we will continue to make the Parks and Recs contribution that we have made the last 3 years. In totality, I believe the Parks and Recs contribution under the TSA is about $146,000 in addition to the monitoring fee. Those are my comments.
Now we have Council President John Egliosi. In the interest of time, we're going to try to keep our testimony to 2 minutes, possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members, council members, public. I stand and I rise, of course, here in support of this change. As you know, the city council did pass the original tax stabilization with our business partners, Westminster partners, along with Abdul, Mr. Burst over here, in which we all agreed to understand that the building next door to us, that we all see and park next to, for me, for almost 15 years, for you folks, any 4 to 10 to 12 years, this closed up building, it's all beat up, historic, and it's something that we need to get back online. The council, as before, we stood up and we realized that we had to do it then. I urge my council colleagues to support this initiative and do it today. The mission hasn't changed. The city of Providence still needs a lot of help. These historic buildings, and you're gonna hear about another one tonight, we are in a very interesting time. All of us are gonna be able to actually create true positive change for the city of Providence, getting a beat up historic building back online, bring life to it, have people living, eating, raising their families, spending money downtown Providence and in our city. I urge my council colleagues to support this. The project originally was $39 million in construction costs. It's going up to almost $53 million. So I have to commend the developers who are from Washington, D.C., by the way, coming from there to Providence and willing to continue to invest in the city of Providence and to make this a great city. I urge my colleagues to support this effort, support this change. It's a positive. You want to see this building come back online. And unfortunately, the way the business market is, sometimes we have to help, and this is make good business sense. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all, and be well.
Thank you, Council President. Next up, Paul McDonald, please. Please say your name for the record.
My name is Paul MacDonald. Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the committee. I am the president of the Providence Central Labor Council, representing some 15, 20 affiliated unions with over 30,000 members. I'm also legislative director for Teamsters Local 251, and I'm here in support of this ordinance. I've been around a while. Hard to believe I've been coming into this building since the 1950s. The first mayor that I ever met was a guy named Bonnie Reynolds, and I'll bet most people in this room don't even know who Bonnie Reynolds was, Walter H. Reynolds. been my honor and pleasure to be before many of the city councils and the same ones tonight. I've known a lot of you for a long time. I've been part of the changes of Providence in one way or the other, from building the Civic Center, which is now the AMP, moving the rivers, building the convention center complex, the garages, the railroad station, you name it, the Providence Central Labor Council has been a part of this. This is an important ordinance. This means that the men and women in the back of me here will look forward to rebuilding that building to make it useful, to make it something that this city will be proud of. And there's no room, there will be not another chance to fix this building. If this building don't get fixed this time, you might as well put the lights out and get the wrecking ball ready if you can afford to do that. The point is that it's jobs as far as I'm concerned. The men and women who made this city, built this city. I'm very proud of what we have accomplished in the Central Labor Council. We've worked hard with you. We worked with you, for you. We enjoy your support. I hope you can support this ordinance. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Mayor-elect Brett Smiley. This is testimony on Hive.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Brett Smiley. I'll be very brief because I also want to testify on the second item. But I am excited for the adaptation of the proposal for the Hive. For any of us who have worked downtown, we've seen this building fall into disrepair, and I appreciate the council's hard work and the developers' willingness to change their plans to make this a productive and still viable project going forward. And as the next mayor of Providence, we'll be excited to see this project move forward and hopefully be able to share a ribbon cutting with you all in a couple of years as this is turned into housing that is so desperately needed in our city here in Providence. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, signed up appear to be the owner that already presented. I also have Taylor Bell. So that was with the owner who presented, correct? Next, I have Lawrence Mancini.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Finance Committee, members of the council. I also will be brief. I, like the esteemed speakers before me, I'm here this evening on behalf of the administration and in my capacity as the city's chief financial officer. And I too commend the developer for the change in use. What happened during COVID, while this had great plans and great prospects for a hotel, this is a truly historic property immediately adjacent to Providence City Hall. The administration is in full support, and we support the full change by the developer and look forward to giving testimony in the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. That is all I have on the my sheets. Is there
Madam
anyone
Chair.
else in the room that would like to speak on the Hive that hasn't signed up? Please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Thank you.
You have
So-
2 minutes, sir.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. And I do want to commend this committee for having done the right thing on this building in the past. I know that was hard to do, and I think the committee deserves credit for that. You know, there's a lot that's been said about this development, but I do think it is critical that when we think about the future of Providence, we sometimes look at the math, we sometimes look at the facts, and we actually get it right. And I'm looking at the financial analysis for this development. And it proposes a couple of things that I just don't think are realistic given the realities of our real estate market. Year 5, the assessment is at 18%. It's at 18 million, and then it only becomes 20 million and 900,000 on year 20. That's a tiny growth in assessed value. over a 15-year period. I want to ask anyone here who may own property, may have gotten a tax assessment, have you ever seen it go up by such a small amount over such a long period of time? I don't think so. The development costs in this building, we don't know the true numbers, but they're likely to be well north of 50 million, and the assessed value, even in the beginning, is under 20 million. We got to be realistic with our numbers. And on this project, I think it is crucial that when we make this evaluation, the charge before this committee to determine whether this quote inures to the benefit of the city. Hard to do that when the math behind the costs to the city isn't real. And when we look at the city's long-term financial future, we have to understand that this isn't a joke. That Providence is in very serious financial trouble, and before we give large amounts of tax subsidies to a hotel, maybe we should think for just a second if
Please
we
wrap up
really
your
run
remarks,
the
sir.
numbers out properly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? That concludes our public hearing on item 1. Madam Clerk, could you please read item 2 into the record?
Item number 2, an ordinance establishing a tax stabilization agreement for High Rock Westminster Street LLC.
Could you please, Sergeant, thank you, bring me the sheets. Thank you kindly. All right. Is everybody who wished to speak on this matter signed up on these sheets? Gentlemen, would you like to speak on item 2? Okay. He can sign up, and then we're going to begin. Thank you, Sergeant. Okay, so the petitioner, can we have the petitioner to the podium, please, to begin our discussion of item 2?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Nicholas Heemond. I'm an attorney at Darrow Everett, and I have been a part of a team of people that have worked on the effort to redevelop 111 Westminster, which we all call with affection the Superman Building, for the last 10 years. During that time, we have worked with 3 governors, 2 mayors, 3 speakers of the House, 2 Senate presidents, and 5 city council presidents to try to restore this building to an effective use in our city. And thankfully, after all those efforts, which included considering a housing use for the building, a mixed use for the building, trying to attract outside corporate office tenants, trying to retain our own state's large corporate office tenants, we find ourselves back where we started, which is a use driven by bringing residents, people, 24-hour occupants to downtown Providence. We've done a lot of that together on a lot of different projects over the last 10 years. But we have a gaping hole at the end of Westminster Street that can only be repaired and filled with one solution. And this is the last piece of that puzzle. Over the past year, in an effort that I had very little to do with, but a lot of my colleagues did, we have negotiated a package of state, federal incentives and city incentives with the McKee administration, with the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation, to put together the tools necessary to leverage $115 million in construction financing, $31 million in equity, including $21 million in new equity from the developer, a promise from the developer, a contractual obligation from the developer to put an additional $11 million in if there are the construction cost overruns you all hear about so much now that change these deals. We have a plan for that. We're going to leverage all that private investment with a public-private partnership. That public-private partnership is $26 million in state programs, not new programs, existing state programs, the same programs that are available to all the other projects that go forward in our state. $24 million in federal investment, money that will go elsewhere if it doesn't come here to Providence. This tax stabilization is the last piece of that puzzle. It's a different kind of tax stabilization because this is a different kind of project. $223 million in total construction costs. That translates to roughly 1,600 construction jobs that will employ people in the building trades in the state of Rhode Island for the next 2 years. It'll generate, when it's done, 1,800 total jobs, including new permanent jobs in downtown Providence. It'll generate over $40 million in MBE, minority-owned business, and WBE, women-owned business, combined. As you know, you require 20%. Between those two requirements, $40 million in work for those contractors. It's 30 years. It's a big project. But when you stack it up in scale and investment with all of the other projects that you've done, whether they be the 5-year TSAs, the 10-year TSAs, the 20-year TSAs, it's in proportion. When you think about the other big deals that you've been involved with, IGT, Providence Place Mall, it's in proportion. I could stand here all day and read the various economic benefits that we've come up with through our own research, through an economic impact analysis that was done by the Commerce Corporation in connection with its approvals of the incentive packages put forward. But I'll give you a few. During the construction, the project is expected to generate $112.4 million in total labor income, $159.7 million in total value added to the economy, $335.9 million in total output, economic output within Providence and Providence County. In the first year after it's completed, the project's expected to yield 170 permanent, full and part-time jobs, generate $9.9 million in total labor income, $14.6 million in total value added, and $24.1 million in total economic input within Providence and Providence County. $83,000 a year in sales tax and restaurant tax just from the people living in the building. The Commerce Corp's economic impact analysis attributed $238 million in direct and indirect economic output during construction. Got affordable housing. And as hard as you advocate for your client as a developer, I don't mind telling you that We got beat up pretty good by Rhode Island housing. Most of the affordable housing projects you hear about in downtown come in with 10 or 20% area median income, and they usually want to be at 120%. 20% of the units at 120% AMI. This project has 20% of the units, 285 total units, 57 deed restricted, restrictive covenant for 30 years for affordable housing. And it's 14 units at 80% area median income, 14 units at 100% area median income, and 29 units at 120%. So it has a broad range of affordable housing. But that's part of the reason why we need a 30-year TSA. There are clawbacks in our agreements with the state. There are restrictions on when the developer can sell the property, when the developer can realize a return, how much of a return the developer can realize. We don't typically have those types of restrictions. So it's a huge project, but it's a project that has a lot of economic benefit, a lot of community benefit. It's going to put a lot of people to work. Tonight, you'll hear from many of the people who will benefit from some of that direct and indirect economic impact. You'll hear from people in the building trades. You'll hear from downtown businesses. You'll hear from the restaurateurs and the store owners that the people living in this building will patronize. This is a legacy project. I doubt many of us will work on a project bigger than this or be part of a project bigger than this. And it's something in it for everybody. I guess that's the benefit of 10 years of exhausting every possible option that you can. But the time to do this is now. The time to fix the hole in downtown is now. Not by calling up and saying, hey, can you turn the light on because we have a festival, but by bringing 500 residents to live in a building and to turn the lights on for a real reason and to achieve all the great benefits we can. So have much of the information that I have highlighted here on these boards. We've given hard copies of this to you as well. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, whether it be now, whether it be at the Rise. But with that, I'll conclude my opening presentation. Yes.
Next up, we have Council President John Egliosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members.
Let's
committee
try to
members.
keep our remarks to 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
I will try. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening also. Very quickly, a lot of you, many years ago when I first began my journey in the council, a lot of you either weren't here, weren't born, maybe not in the state, but you didn't know what the city looked like back then. And it didn't look like what it looks like today. There wasn't much happening. Boarded up buildings, parking lots everywhere, and not much development. The city has gone through a major transition. And through that transition was the help and putting their back into the city councils that I was lucky enough to serve on, and recognizing that we had to invest today for a better future tomorrow. And those past council that I served on saw that. And everything you see out here today, from the rivers to the mall, to the hotels, to the residential, all those buildings are all a testament to understanding that the city needed to move forward in a positive direction. I want to thank my council colleagues in the past, and I want to thank my council colleagues today, because you have another opportunity. That building you see over there, the historic building, it's beautiful. We all love it. It is a great building, but it's been dark for a long time. It reminds me of the Masonic Temple when I first came here. It was dark since the 20s. It was boarded up. It was actually burnt out. Took a lot of effort. Took federal, state, and city effort to get that building back online. This building we see right behind Madam Chair and the committee over there is the same situation. It's taking a Herculean effort, state, city, and all of us here today, to make a decision to build a better future and a brighter future for tomorrow. I urge all of you to support this initiative. Let me say something. I recognize it's not a perfect project. No doubt about it. There hasn't been one tax stabilization that I've supported that's perfect, but we understand that it has greater benefit. And I'll tell you, on this one, I hear this all the time. This is not an affordable housing development project with a commercial component. This is a commercial development with affordable housing to it. We're not going to solve our affordable housing problem tonight with this building or any other building. It's a bigger question, but it is a piece to the puzzle to provide opportunity for all. I urge everybody to support this. It's going to bring jobs, vitality, people, commerce, and all of you coming next year back and the future council members. I'm going to be pretty happy to walk this downtown area and bump into your friends, families, and relatives who are living in the building next door and over there and bringing this city to a better place. I urge all of you to support it. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee, and be well.
Thank you, Council President. Mayor-elect Brett Smiley, please.
Good evening.
Please
Madam
identify
Chair.
yourself for the record, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Brett Smiley, here to speak on in favor of this proposal. It is critically important that we finally turn the lights back on in the Industrial Trust building. I can tell you from firsthand experience, having served as Governor Raimondo's chief of staff at the State House for 5 years, that we were really close many times on major commercial tenants, many times. But we could never actually land one of those corporate tenants. The building owners, state leaders, city leaders were all totally invested in that effort. And now, post-pandemic, the economically viable use for this building is, and for some time has been, housing. And this proposal is the one to move forward. I'm excited about the prospects of the incredibly good and important construction jobs that will be created by this program. I'm excited about the prospect of several hundred new residents living there, supporting our hardworking small business owners downtown who are really struggling post-pandemic. And I'm excited to finally secure the future for this important historic structure that's been on the most endangered list many times. This is the right project. This is the right mix going forward. I know there are concerns about the affordability, but this is not an either-or proposal. We've got need on the affordability spectrum, up and down the spectrum. We need affordability for workforce housing. We need affordability for very low-income housing and everything in between. And this doesn't come out of creating more low-income housing elsewhere throughout the city. And I will support those efforts as well. We are starting to see downtown continue to grow post-pandemic. We have two new grocery stores opening. We just heard about another exciting project. We're seeing major investments coming in our parks and public infrastructure, and this will only complement that work. This is something that's got to happen. This is the right proposal, and I'm here today, so in case there was any doubt about whether the next mayor wanted to support this same proposal, he does. So I'm encouraging you all to please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Everett Pope. Everett Pope.
Stop embarrassing me.
Please identify yourself, sir, for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Everett Pope. I'm in opposition of this solely because I heard Council President Egliosi say that there is not a perfect project. This is not a perfect project. I think we're aware of that. I think when we're talking about what's going on with people on like the ground level, we just had like record high rate hikes for energy. All of those things, people are still kind of like recovering from the pandemic and all of that stuff. I don't think it's like out of the realms of possibility to do a little bit more for folks who are, you know, not in the best of situations right now. And I get it, this is like a sexy luxury development, but, you know, ultimately what could end up happening is that, you know, downtown becomes a ghost town if we don't, you know, try to make little exceptions to the rule. You know, the AMI, if I'm not mistaken, is $70,000. I've never made anything remotely close to $70,000 a year in my life. And I think if we were to poll everybody in this audience, there would be a lot of people identifying where I'm coming from too. So it's not to be critical of, you know, the council members, because like, you know, everybody got their egos and I'm not here to offend anybody. It's just more so like, be a little bit more creative and thoughtful when you put these packages together, because it's, you know, 20-year agreements, and like it has a very drastic impact on the shape of your city, you know? So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Now we have Michael Sabatoni. Michael Sabatoni.
Madam President, members of the council, Michael Sabatoni, President of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council, Business Manager of the Rhode Island Laborers District Council, representing close in both councils, 20,000 men and women, both in the public and private sector, here to strongly support this ordinance. This is a significant project. I've been in this chamber on a few occasions, and very rarely can I say a project of this significance. There's only been a handful in my career. You've heard a few of them mentioned. The Providence Civic Center, Providence Place Mall, Water Place Park, the pedestrian bridge. This building is iconic. It's our identity, not only as residents of the city of Providence, but as residents of the state of Rhode Island. And it's symbolic. And the fact that it's been sitting there dormant is symbolic, meaning the right mix at the right time on how to repurpose this beautiful building. And all of the economic impact that comes with it, both during construction and after construction, and the vibrancy and the symbol it sends to the rest of the nation and the world that Rhode Island and Providence is back. You know, I travel around this city quite often. If you haven't had an opportunity, hang around for another hour or so. Walk around that building when it's dark. Go a few blocks away and look at it. And then you'll see the significance that there's something wrong with such a symbol to the city and the state is sitting there dormant. And we have the opportunity to repurpose it in the right way and create all the economic impacts that go with it. You know, there's some people behind me that's saying that we can't afford to do this. Well, I'm going to suggest to you all, as leaders of the city council, you can't afford not to. So thank you, and I urge your support for this ordinance.
Terry Wright. Terry Wright. Please identify yourself for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, My name is Terry Wright. I organize at DARE, Direct Action for Rights and Equality. But not only do I organize, I'm also a community member. I want to thank you for allowing me. So I want to start by saying not only is this a bad deal, this is bad politics. I believe the city has not readjusted its vision for an inclusionary downtown, a city built to service all income types. Where's the crime here? Providing housing for all income types, including 30% at 30% AMI is the right thing to do. Our cities and neighborhoods are being heavily gentrified again. Our downtown has no culture in it. All it has is bars, banks, and privilege. Poor and low-income Rhode Islanders can shop downtown, but we can't live downtown. Housing trust fund monies that housing advocates advocated for. So High Rock can take our money and they can't house us. We can't live there. Homelessness affects everyone. And my question is, where are all the downtown business owners? Business owners who dislike loitering in front of their businesses, panhandling, and refuse to hire such persons. Where are the businesses? Because again, I say homelessness affects everyone and businesses should be here in support and advocating to bring us out of this housing crisis. This is what I call profits over people. And there is nothing productive about displacement. And I would really like to see High Rock take that $500,000 of kickback money promised to Crossroads and use it now in their business plan to house 33% at 30% AMI.
Please wrap up your remarks.
Because, absolutely, again, this is gentrification, segregation all over again. And I'm not sure which one packs a bigger punch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott McCullough. Scott McCullough. Am I not pronouncing it correctly? Scott McCullough. Oh, there we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Duhamel. I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council. I'll be brief. As you know, we are in very enthusiastic support of this TSA. We think, give me a privilege of talking about myself as a downtown denizen, someone who loves Providence. I think it's really important that that building, a symbol of Providence, comes back. We all know what that will mean. People living there, people going there, spending money in the city. But let's talk about it in the construction point of view. That's what we call a major job. That's a job that starts and lasts for quite some time. Our people, they go from a string of projects and another string of projects. That's how they make a living. To have the opportunity to work downtown in the city of Providence on a project this big, this large, is unique. It's important. It'll put money on people's tables. It'll allow them to save money. This project is an important one. It's an essential one. And once again, I will say that the 17 trades that make up the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades and their members, and particularly their Providence members, are in full support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew Poyant. Please identify yourself for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Andrew Poyant, and I'm here in opposition of the tax stabilization as it's currently proposed. As a former candidate for City Council in Ward 14, I've had thousands of conversations over the summer with residents in my ward. So many people are hurting right now, struggling to get by. And out of all the conversations I've had, not a single one has said we need to dump millions and millions of dollars into downtown. People are struggling, and this isn't going to benefit the people in my ward. This isn't going to benefit the people that are struggling the most. As Terry has stated, you, the city council, are the people that define what is in this agreement. You are the ones that decide what we want to give our money to, and we shouldn't agree to anything that doesn't have 30%, 33% of the units be low-income housing for 30% AMI or less. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julia, Brooke, Vaughn. What is that, Brown? Julia Kin Restaurant. I can't read the last name. Julia from Kin Restaurant, are you here? Braun, Councilman Narducci suggests Braun. Julia Braun, Kin Restaurant, going once, okay. Next we have, oh my God, Brandon Hung. Brandon Hung. Brandon Hung. Okay. We have Greg Mancini. Damian Lima. We're not doing well here. Cliff Wood.
Good evening.
Please identify yourself for the record. You have 2 minutes, sir.
I'm Cliff Wood. I'm the Executive Director of the Providence Foundation and Providence resident. It's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you. I'm here in support of this TSA for several reasons. Most specifically is that the health of the downtown economically, culturally, is required for us fiscally, as you know, as Finance Committee members for the City of Providence. The City of Providence is good for about half the state's GDP. So in as much as it's sometimes hard to see, there's a straight line between having it active and vibrant down here and our well-being as a state. I have had opportunity to stand in this very long line with some small business owners that I know from the downtown. And having that building empty for the last almost 10 years has impacted them very negatively and continues to do so. I see this as a binary option. Either we fix the building or we leave it empty for the next 10 years, have it affect our well-being as small business owners, as residents, as public safety officials, as transit riders, and then just generally for the health of the city. We have a housing shortage up and down the stock of housing. We have effectively zero full occupancy downtown. It's across the whole city, really across the state. So any opportunity that we have right now to either fix this building or leave it empty for the next 10 years, either go on a track to have us increasing the income, tax income of this building, as well as all the tertiary income that comes from people eating sandwiches, going to restaurants, living down here. Our tourism industry depends very much on the reputation and health of our downtown. The convention center is just up the street. That building is more than a symbol, but it's an opportunity for us to thrive as we come out of COVID, to have activity 20 hours a day, people coming and going. And again, given against the alternative, which is what you see there, it looks bad, it is bad. It creates dangerous opportunity. It creates opportunity for people to make the downtown unwelcoming for anyone. Again, Cliff Wood, Executive Director of the Providence Foundation, been working downtown for about 25 years, seen lots of cycles, and I can say that we will be better to have that building fixed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jackie Goldman. Jackie Goldman. Okay. Senator Sam Bell. Oh, sorry. Please identify yourself for the record. You have 2 minutes.
All right, hello, my name is Jackie Goldman, and thank you so much for having me. It is no secret that Providence is in a precarious position fiscally. There is already $1 billion hole in our pension system. The cost of living has gone up tremendously, and the rise in houselessness has been about 50% in the past 4 years. At a finance committee hearing held in February, y'all stated that there were 15,000 people facing evictions in 2022 alone. And yet we are considering giving out hundreds of millions of dollars to an out-of-state developer to develop housing that no one in this city can afford. While you build this as $29 million, that is not what the math is saying. There's a lot more to it. I'm not going to go into it. I wrote it down. It's in my written testimony. I do want to say that this development will have devastating consequences for Providence. We already face an incredible affordable housing shortage. Almost 50% of renters in Providence are rent burden, meaning that they spend 30% or more of their paychecks on rent. Rents have risen over 20% in the past year alone, and this is in part due to deals like this one. When we build more luxury housing, we are in effect displacing lower income people and having mass gentrification in the city. And looking at the rents that were just released today, to get the affordable housing units, someone would need to be making over $50,000 in a year in Providence, when the average family here is making closer to 40. So we have to ask, who is benefiting from this deal? It's the developers and the politicians whose campaigns they fund. These are not the people who need the resources. This TSA needs to contain at least 33% affordable housing for people making 30% AMI. By passing this TSA, the Finance Committee and the City Council are turning their backs on the people of Providence. We need to make real investments in truly affordable housing. We cannot use affordable housing trust funds to build housing that no one in this city can afford, or that the average person in the city cannot afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Bell, Sam Bell.
Thank you so much.
Please identify yourself for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Hopefully it's minutes, not moments.
You have 2 minutes, sir. Please begin.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. My name is Sam Bell. I live right here in Providence. First of all, I want to talk about the financial analysis we've got here. It's similarly silly to the previous one. We talk about spending $220 million and only raising the assessed value of a building by 40 million. Come on. An increase of only 2% per reval cycle. I want to see a homeowner in Providence who got their last reval bill who feels like that's a reasonable number. But I also want to talk about a reality that this is illegal. And it's illegal for a very simple reason. The council didn't follow the proper procedure. After we passed this state law authorizing a 30-year TSA, I was waiting for the council to do what they have to do and pass an ordinance to authorize a 30-year TSA. We all know the convoluted way TSA law works. You got to authorize it first, and then you have this hearing under the state law to determine if it's in the city's benefit. There was no authorization for a 30-year TSA. I assumed it would happen, but it didn't. Didn't happen. And no, the wording of the state law did not change the fundamental reality of how TSA law works. It says, notwithstanding the foregoing, the City Council of the City of Providence may extend the 20-year period in subsection A of this section by an additional 10 years for real property. Real property only, not personal property, as this deal says. In the ordinance, in the whereas, it says it applies to personal property for that extra 10 years, which is not authorized under the state law, is not properly drafted. But more importantly, this is how TSA law works. When it was laid down initially, the electors were granted the authority to extend for 20 years only the ability to pass a TSA. Now, subsection B was reinterpreted so that
Please wrap up your remarks, sir.
Yes, I can. 4 cities, they gained the power of the electors. Cities only. But all this does is it changes the authorizing period. And it's very easy to fix. Just pass an ordinance. It can be done. And if it doesn't happen, if the council doesn't want to follow the proper law in order to do this legally and simply and easily, maybe the courts will be fine with it for now. I imagine the current mayor will assume the TSA should be enforced. I could be wrong, but I imagine that. But there's no guarantee. If it's not legal, at some point,
that's time, sir.
Some government may come along,
time, sir,
and not enforce an illegal ordinance.
Okay. Nick Freeman.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Council, the Finance Committee. My name is Nick Freeman. I'm Deputy Director.
Excuse me, sir. Can you speak into that mic? It's down way low. Thank
I'm
you.
very sorry about that, Madam
No
Chair.
worries. Please continue.
My name is Nicholas Freeman. I am the Assistant Director of the Providence Foundation. I'm also a lifelong Providence resident and, as many of you know, the former Policy Director of the Providence City Council. I'm here today to speak strongly in support of this tax stabilization agreement, and I hope you will all support it tonight. I'm in support of this for a number of reasons, but I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. First of all, vitality. We'll be adding hundreds of new residents, the equivalent of a whole new neighborhood, into a tower that has been vacant for a decade in the heart of our city. This will add activity, economic activity, vibrancy to our city center that has been much lacking over the last decade. The Providence Foundation represents over 120 downtown small businesses, cultural organizations, art organizations, nonprofits, all of whom have suffered from that building being closed over the last decade, from the lights being off there. We represent them, and they strongly want this building with the lights back on and active. Secondly, I want to talk about historic preservation. I come from a family who came to Rhode Island because of historic preservation. I'm sitting here with my friend Brent Runyan from Providence Preservation Society. I'm proud to have worked with the Providence Preservation Society on an event a couple of years ago after that building was named one of the most endangered historic buildings in the country, and we worked to save it. We have an opportunity right now to save this Rhode Island icon, to save an incredible example of architecture as public art. A lot of people will talk to you. You can read things about the Art Deco structure of that. And trust me, I can nerd out on that all day long. But that is a huge, incredible, emotional sign of our symbol of our city. We need to have the lights on there. And lastly, I want to just talk about public investment and its incredible role in moving the city forward and making this city great. All the great projects that have happened in the city, from moving rivers, train tracks, highways, things the Providence Foundation is proud to have supported, all of those required public investment. But it also goes down to even the smallest projects, the things we don't even think about. The projects that get funded through historic tax credits, through various different structures that the city uses, including tax stabilizations, to make great things happen in the city. This is an appropriate use. Thank you. And lastly, just because it's been brought up over and over again, for years, when I worked for the council, there was this claim, this criticism of tax stabilizations. Oh, they're going to end up paying less than they do now. Oh, they're not supporting our local workers. They're not hiring local. They're not buying local. They're not using women-owned businesses. They're not using minority-owned businesses. They're not supporting our parks. This tax stabilization does all of those things. It guarantees they never pay less than what they're doing now. It ensures a 50% increase in revenue within a decade, a 300% increase by the end of the deal, and all of those other community benefits. Please support this tax stabilization for all the good it's going to do for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Enrique Sanchez. Enrique Sanchez. Please identify yourself for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Enrique Sanchez, State Representative-elect of District 9 in Providence. The recent numbers just were released by Staff Machado, the numbers for the affordable housing units for the Superman building. $2,000 to $2,300 for single room studios, $2,616 to $3,000 for one-bedroom apartments, $3,700 to $4,200 for two bedrooms, $4,796 to $5,287 for three-bedroom apartments, affordable units for the Superman building. There is no doubt in my mind that this is causing gentrification in our neighborhoods. Working people across our city and across our states are suffering from a housing crisis. We're suffering from an education crisis, a housing crisis, and a healthcare crisis, but more than anything, a housing crisis. And this will not benefit my constituents in the city of Providence. Never. I'm not here opposing our unions, our union leadership. I'm not here opposing these projects and housing developments, but we need to rethink and re-strategize who is this going to benefit in the future. Working people or wealthy elites from Boston and from New York? That's what we need to take in mind. And that's why I'm here asking and opposing this TSA, because it is going against our morals and convictions as elected officials, as leaders, as people who represent our communities across Providence and across the state, to our people who are suffering, who are economically suffering. So I ask that we reevaluate this TSA proposal for the benefit of our people, and to rethink the direction that we want to move Providence to. Thank you.
Thank you. Nitchin Pavel, P-A-V-L, Nitchin. Oh, wonderful. Could you please identify yourself for the record? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Nithin Paul. I'm a resident of Providence, and I'm also a primary care physician. I'm here because as a physician, I take care of a lot of people who are working full-time, who are working poor. A lot of my patients include people who have union jobs in construction and things like that. Many of these patients, most of my patients, would never be able to afford these units. Why are we building units for someone else? We should be building units for our own people. And what that means is that if you're going to do luxury development, they need to pay their taxes. The building, the owners of the building need to pay their taxes. They do not need to be getting any tax breaks. If they're going to take a tax break, then they have to actually represent the needs of the people. And we are in a housing crisis. I heard Mayor-elect Brett Smiley saying that we can do it all. We can have the middle income people have housing as well as the lower income people. But what he did not mention was the absolute emergency we are in now. Every single week, I see new families with kids coming from Providence to Woonsocket because that's where the only warming shelter is, because they couldn't afford the rent. Yes, we need affordable housing for everyone, but there is an emergency and we need to prioritize the people who need it now. And we cannot keep putting this off. The people who build these places, they should be able to afford these places. If you're going to have luxury apartments, make that 30%, make the 60% for the rest of the people, for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent Runyan. Please identify yourself. 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Brent Runyan, I'm with the Providence Preservation Society. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. We've had this building on our most endangered properties list since 2014 when it became vacant, shortly after it became vacant. As has been mentioned, we have had it listed on the 11 most endangered places in America list. In 2013 and 2014, we led hundreds of Rhode Island residents on tours, never reaching the end of the wait list. Further, since 2013, we believe that a successful adaptive reuse plan will prioritize much needed residential use, and the pandemic and housing crisis that have been mentioned many times now make that even truer than it was a decade ago. We are also a supporter of public-private partnerships, such as the ones that successfully helped South Street Landing and Masonic Temple be renovated. And we also believe that there must be many benefits to public-private partnerships, and we believe that this project offers many benefits. First, there's the tangible benefit of retaining a beautiful and artful building. Another benefit is more intangible, that of honoring the craftsmanship of the artists and construction workers whose labor is evident today. Second, there are significant environmental benefits to preserving a building of this size. It has a tremendous embodied energy, the kind of energy that went into the materials and labor that built it, as well as avoiding the energy and landfill costs required for demolition. Finally, it does include dozens of below market rate housing, which, as people have pointed out, is still quite high. And the city's anti-displacement and comprehensive housing policy have pointed out that we need housing at all levels. So while I would love to see more affordable units in this building, I urge the council to prioritize putting affordable housing everywhere it can as soon as possible, whether that's here or elsewhere. So we urge you to give due consideration to the ordinance in front of you. Some research revealed that in 2014, when the project was first estimated at about $140 million, there was estimated to be $25 million in annual economic spending resulting from full occupancy. Over the years, this economic activity has not been captured. That economic activity could have been used to build more housing. Today, it's estimated to cost 220 million or more, much more than it would have cost even 3 years ago, yet less than it will cost in just a few years. So we fully support putting this building back into operation as soon as possible. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. Charles Penning. Charles Penning.
Hi, my name is Charles Penning. I've been a homeowner on the west side of Providence since the mid-'80s, where I live. I'm not here to quibble about the merits of renovating this building and having it occupied. I think that's a really good idea. Like everyone else, I've been sad to see it vacant for the last 10 years or so. However, I do have a problem with where they want to get their money. Now, between the tax breaks and the outright payment, they want about $40 million from the city of Providence. Well, when I have a problem with my house and have to paint it or work on it, I can't go to the city of Providence and say, I need money. If I'm cited by code enforcement for a violation, I have to scare up the money on my own, or else the city will come down on me. I didn't know I was a banker. The city of Providence has no money of its own. It's my money. It's my money. And I don't want High Rock's hand in my pocket. They should go and scare up the money like anyone else does, like I have to do as a homeowner in Providence, as a property owner. They can go out and get a loan. If their project is so great, there are financial institutions all over the world where they should be able to get a $40 million advance, $40 million loan. This is just plain wrong. They're extorting the city of Providence. It's blackmail, plain and simple. They own the building. They should have thought about this when they bought it. I had to when I bought my house. I can't go to the city of Providence for money. They take money from me. And the irony is it's happening during a year where Providence homeowners got raped by the new taxes. My home tax went up by 50%, and then with the exemption I have, still a 30% raise in my taxes. So I say let High Rock go and get their money someplace else or sell the building. If they can't afford to do it themselves, the same way if I couldn't, I'd have to figure it out. Let them figure it out. I am not a bank. The city of Providence is not a bank. I'm not a bank.
Please wrap up your remarks, sir.
Nobody put a gun to their head and told them they had to buy the building. They bought it. Now own it, just like we have to own our property and take care of it, or else we have to give it up. Period. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Jean Disla. Jean Disla. Please identify yourself for the record. You have
Hi.
two minutes.
Hi, my name is Jim Disla. I'm a BW member for Local 99. So I'm an electrical apprentice. I wanna also resident of almost 7 Providence. I want to take a moment just to say how important it is to me of resident of Providence that Superman building is returning to its former glory. We also should be proud of our story and work as done by those come before us. If some assistance from the community that restore the majestic structure, then as taxpayer in serious Providence, I say, let's go to work. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Justin Reyes. Justin Reyes. One more time. Justin Reyes. Brent Delgarian. Brent Delgarian. Going once, going twice. Please identify yourself for the record.
Grant Belgarian, citizen of the city. 2 things.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Put your egg timer on the desk. 1 thing per minute. Number 1, when TSAs were first created in the city of Providence, it was back in the late 80s. Paolino was mayor, and they were designed for industrial development with the idea that once the building was created, constructed, there were going to be these high-paying jobs long-term. That has evolved over time. So now not only is it industrial development, it's now commercial development, it's now residential development. It's not just in low and moderate income neighborhoods, it's in high income neighborhoods. Excuse me. Downtown's a high income neighborhood. The only reason it's not considered high income is because we include students as low income students. A lot of students live in downtown. And so suddenly downtown is a low income neighborhood. That doesn't make any sense. So number one, we need to refocus our TSAs so that we accomplish more than just building a building or rehabbing a building. We accomplish something long-term as far as jobs and employment is concerned, and high income jobs at that. Number two, with regards to this building in particular, I'm a Providence native. I appreciate historic buildings. I appreciate historic architecture. People come from all over to see our beautiful buildings and gorgeous architecture, and they're impressed and they're amazed. However, we don't need to subsidize high-cost projects. And in this project in particular, I have a suggestion. On a regular basis in the Providence Journal, we see full-page articles from the Bank of America saying, we're here with you, we want to work with you, we are the power, come to us. I suggest that the city of Providence go to Bank of America and say, Bank of America, repurchase your building. I think they sold it for $39 million. I forget exactly how much it was. And you become part of the solution. High Rock Development.
Please wrap up, sir.
30 more seconds. The High Rock Development purchased the building. Obviously, they didn't make a very wise investment because now they need money from all over the place. So let Bank of America come back in and be part of the solution and not just look at it from afar. So that's my suggestion and recommendation. Someone needs to make a phone call.
Thank you. Time. Alvin Reyes, Alvin Reyes.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. On behalf of Joe Walsh, our business manager, and the 800+ men and women from the IBEW Local 99, we're in favor of this bill and ordinance.
Please identify yourself, sir. Your name?
My name's Alvin Reyes. I am the organizer of IBEW Local 99.
Thank you, sir.
This ordinance holds a special place in my heart because I grew up in Ward 10. I have family and friends that still live in Ward 9. And I, because of these ordinances, had the opportunity to enter a pre-apprenticeship program that allowed me to purchase homes in Ward 8. I was able to transform my life because of projects like these. They gave me a pathway into the middle class, gave me a profession that I'm proud of, that I can give back to my community, my state. I don't want to live downtown. I want to get a good wage earning like a lot of these men and women and have the opportunity to reinvest back into our communities. We don't want to invest in downtown. We want to be able to work here, create a vital state of prominent economic stability in the force of this nation. We were able to do projects like the Deep Water Wind that have been monumental across the nation. This is going to be the tallest building in Rhode Island right now. It'd be a shame to destroy it. It'd be a shame that the residents of Rhode Island and Providence cannot work in this building. We don't want people from out of state to come and redevelop this project. We want residents here to be able to transform their lives and go back into their community, buy homes, build playgrounds, and change the transformation of their generations. We don't want to live down here. We want to be able to come down here and enjoy downtown for the views, the history, the collegiate atmosphere that's down here. We want people to come down here and visit Rhode Island. Many of these men and women down here, they worked through the pandemic. They risked their lives while people were at home sitting and clustered in their homes. They want to be able to be proud to be able to come downtown and say, look to their daughters and their sons, look at what dad was part of, or mom. We have many men and women here that just got out of work,
Please wrap
not
up,
eating.
sir.
They're thirsty, they're hungry, and they came here in support of this project. We urge you to please consider this project on behalf of the men and women and residents of
Thank you.
Providence, Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you. Turner Mendez. Turner Mendez. Turner Mendez. One last time. Turner Mendez. Mendez, Turner. I'm sorry, you signed up to speak? Okay, please come to the mic and identify yourself for the record. I apologize if I didn't pronounce your
Oh,
name
no, that's
properly.
okay. I wanted to make sure I was coming when my time was called. I'm Turner Mehdi Zimmerman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Providence is in a housing crisis, and this is news to none. But I do wonder how many of you voting tonight are actively experiencing a housing crisis. Because I am. And let me tell you, it sucks. My mayor-elect is a landlord who does not support rent stabilization, and the iconic building in my downtown is going to be turned into luxury developments. Why should I believe you care about affordable housing? These units are not enough, nor are they affordable. If this development wants to have a 30-year tax break, then at least 30% of the units need to be actually affordable, which is the 30% AMI calculation. I'm not saying I don't want this building to happen. I do. I'm not saying there shouldn't be luxury apartments there. I know there will be. What I'm asking for is that if you're going to say that you're attending to and creating affordable housing in this apartment building, that you actually make them affordable. Let us know that you see us. Let us know that you care. Folks who are experiencing homelessness in Kennedy Plaza will be getting lit up by luxury developments. We need to make sure that the average Providence person is being taken care of instead of catering to high-income luxury apartments that will be getting filled by new folks coming into Providence. I please ask you to stand with affordable housing and knowing what that looks like for your fellow Providence residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Miller. Identify yourself for the record.
Hi, good
You
evening.
have
My
2
name is
minutes.
Jeff Miller. I'm representing the Commerce Corporation tonight. And most of the important pieces and benefits of this project have been talked about by other folks. I just wanted to emphasize 2 things. One is, first of all, this was a heavily negotiated deal with the developer that brings the state a lot of benefit, and we reduce the actual cost to the state. The other thing I want to describe is that this was a Gordian knot of all sorts of different financing programs, state programs, federal programs, the city, and they were all predicated upon the ability to have a TSA based on the pro forma that was described. So if any one of those pieces falls out, there is a risk to the project. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lawrence Mancini. Lawrence Mancini.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Good
and members of the committee, members of the council. Once again, I appear before you on behalf of this item, on behalf of the administration. Madam Chair, members of the committee, we've heard from some very diverse speakers this evening. It's worth noting, as Mr. Miller just stated, that this took a significant effort of state and city and developer and partners to do this. This is a public-private partnership, the likes of which we have not seen. In addition to the TSA, while this project is under construction, The revitalization of the Superman building will drive significant economic activity, bringing nearly 1,600 construction jobs to downtown Providence. In addition, this project will provide critical new housing opportunities through the creation of 285 residential downtown units, 57 of which will be affordable to market. And lastly, it is the policy of the city of Providence that minority business enterprises, MBEs, and women-owned business enterprises, WBEs, should have the maximum opportunity to participate in procurements and projects as prime contractors and vendors. The developer has committed to the absolute minimum of 20% in this project. Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the council, the administration stands in support of this, and we welcome any opportunity to speak to you this evening in committee. Thank you for the opportunity.
Committee on Finance, regular meeting, Monday, October 17, 2022. I am Councilwoman Joanne Ryan. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read the roll?
Chairwoman Joanne Ryan.
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Carmen Castillo.
Present.
Councilman Nicolas Narducci.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Helen DeAnthony. Councilman James Taylor. We have 5 present.
Okay.
4 present, I'm sorry.
4 present, we have a quorum, correct?
We have a quorum, yes.
Okay, let the record reflect. Let the record reflect is Solicitor Chiaverini in the room. Yes, he's in the back of the room. Okay. Madam Clerk, please read item 1 into the record.
Item number 1. An ordinance in amendment of ordinance number 2019-55, number 541, approved December 13, 2019, an ordinance establishing a tax stabilization agreement for Westminster Partners, LLC, located on Assessor's Plat number 20, Lot 409, 203 Westminster Street.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that we are joined this evening by our council colleagues, Councilman Oscar Vargas, Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris, Councilwoman Kat Kerwin, Councilwoman Miller, Councilman Taylor, and Councilwoman Anthony has joined us. Madam Clerk, please take note. Okay.
So notice.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to amend item 1 to add language, and I'm going to read it. The section that we're going to add is basically 9.9. This document ends at 9.8. So it's during the term of this agreement, the property owner shall have the exclusive option to lease the adjacent surrounding sidewalks from the city for $1. If property owner chooses to exercise this option, the property owner and the city shall enter into a lease agreement, and property owner shall be responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk during the term of said lease. Further, the property owner hereby waives any right to claim any right to the tax pursuant to RI General Laws 45-5-13.11 at any time during or after the expiration of this agreement. May I have that motion?
Motion made, Madam Chair.
Motion made by Councilman Narducci, seconded by Vice Chair Castillo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Or the amendment is added to item 1. Okay, and now we have storyboards. May I have a motion to enter the storyboards, which is a hard copy package, and let's call it Exhibit 1A. Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by
motion.
Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. So we have the storyboards. And then the next item is a letter entered into testimony. We're going to call it Exhibit B. May I have that motion? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by
Second
Councilman
motion.
Narducci. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. These documents are all online, by the way, if anybody wants to see them. I know that they were posted earlier today. Okay. So do council committee members, any questions relative to item 1? I see Councilwoman Anthony has her hand raised.
Yes, I'd like, first of all, thank you.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I can. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I would just like someone to speak to the amendment and why that is, why we're amending the agreement.
Can I have the owner petitioner could you identify yourself for the record, please? Actually, we're going to swear you in. Forgot all about that. Madam Clerk, would you kindly swear in the owner? Can't hear you.
I do. My name is Gordon Bust.
Can you answer that question, sir?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Yes, why are you proposing this amendment?
Yes, there's two reasons for the amendment. One is due to COVID and the financing markets. A hotel is no longer viable.
I'm sorry, the paragraph that just was ended about the exclusive option to lease the adjacent surrounding sidewalks. I'm
Oh, that was-
asking about that particular provision.
Yes, so that was a amendment to allow us to potentially look at maintaining the sidewalks in lieu of the city maintaining the sidewalks in exchange for the lease.
So it's an additional benefit to the city
Yes,
Thank you.
that you've agreed to graciously.
And then I also have questions concerning the assessed value on the schedule that was presented to us. And I was wondering how those values were calculated. And I'm talking from year 1 through 20.
my understanding is the tax assessor for Providence calculated them. I'm not certain how they calculated them.
May I have an answer to that question, Madam Chair?
Mr. Mancini, were you available to answer for the administration? And we're going to swear you in, sir. Oh, and we have the assessor as well. Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record, and the clerk is going to swear you in.
Swear in.
Under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
I do. Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Providence.
Janice Muscatelli, City Assessor.
So, Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
Councilwoman, thank you for the question. As is typical in any TSA, tax stabilization agreement, the city generally allows the opportunity for a base tax to be ramped up in the first 3 years and then changes year over year based on values that the assessor expects to see over the next remaining years, including if there is a reval valuation in any of those ensuing years. The assessor is here this evening and can provide that testimony.
Thank you.
Yes, hi. On this particular property, what I did was.
Could you
look
speak
for-
into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
No
Can you hear me
worries,
now?
thank you.
On this
Better, much better.
particular property, what I did was looked at properties similar to the type of project that they are proposing there. It came up with a price per unit based off of the comparable properties. In this case, I believe I was between 145 to about 148,000 per unit. That was just the starting base. And then I did a 2% ramp up for revaluations. Obviously, that could change because we don't know what the future market will bring in the real estate.
So I guess that's my question. Thank you for clarifying that. The 2% ramp up, why only 2%?
It was just an average I used for the last historical 15 years of data I had for these types of apartment complexes. And over a 15-year period, the average percent of increase was 2%. That obviously, we did have years where we went up 7%, maybe down 12%. But overall, when I took an average, it was 2%. It was just a conservative approach.
Okay, so that's 2%, and that was the average over the last 15 years. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Councilwoman? Are you good?
I just wanted to ask one more question about, maybe from
Councilwoman
the
Anthony,
owner.
please.
Thank you. I guess this would be a question for the owner. So my understanding is that the construction is starting when?
Our goal would be to start in the first half of next year. It's going to be dependent on when we can close the financing.
Okay, and how long will that construction period be?
So we're estimating between 18 and 24 months for the construction to be complete with C of O.
And then the other question I had was the increase in the renovation cost significantly from 2019. And can you in general just tell us why that is?
Sure, there's two main factors to that. As everybody in this room knows, inflation has been significant over the last several years, especially in the construction industry. And in addition to that, there's additional scope that is needed to make those residential apartments. We now have to put kitchens in all 124 units. And there's some other minor construction items that added to that.
And the increase is, I'm sorry, can you just remind me what the increase is from the original TSA?
Sure. So the original was about $39 million, and we're going up to about $52.7 million.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Committee members, council members? Any further questions on this matter? With that, may I entertain a motion to recommend passage to the full council? Motion. Motion to recommend approval as amended. Thank you,
Motion
Madam
made.
Clerk. Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman
Second
Nanducci.
motion.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The matter is approved, recommended approval to the full council. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, before you go on, can I make
Councilman
one
Nanducci?
comment? Because again, I've been saying this for years. You heard tonight from a state rep and a state senator about this particular TSA. Well, when are you guys going to go after Brown University? A $40 billion endowment that their agreement pilot program is $33 million over 10 years. When are you going to go after them? Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councilman Narducci. Okay, Madam Clerk, kindly read item 2 into the record.
Item number 2, an ordinance establishing a tax stabilization agreement for High Rock Westminster Street LLC.
Okay, we have some housekeeping here. I have a substitution for item 2. May I have a motion to enter the substitution for item 2? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded
Second
by
motion.
Councilman Narducci. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We have item 2 substituted. I have an exhibit A I would like to enter into the record, multi-page document, which is essentially on the boards that were presented during the public hearing. May I have a motion to call that exhibit A to item 2? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. And then we have a number of letters that were entered posted by the clerk. There are a number of letters in opposition, in support, and then mixed opinions. So let's call this exhibit 2B. May I have that motion? Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The letters are entered into the record. Okay, let's get the owner in council up here, if they're in the building, on item 2. Council?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get you here. Is there anyone else that's going to testify on this matter? Actually, let's get Larry Mancini up here. I think we should just swear everybody in. Anyone else on this topic that is going to testify? Jimmy, Mr. Lombardi, why don't we get you sworn in just in case there's a question that we need you to answer? Madam Clerk, would you kindly swear everybody in at once?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name?
Nicholas Heeman for the developer.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer, City of Providence.
Oscatelli, City Assessor.
Last but not least.
James Lombardi, City Treasurer.
Okay, thank you all. All right, so starting off, Mr. Heeman, would you like to offer a summary of what was heard in the public hearing to start us off? And then I'll open the floor for questions.
Yeah, like I said,
between all the different projects that we've tried to accomplish there, I don't know that there's ever been a more vetted economic development project in the city of Providence than this one. Sometimes people say, have you exhausted all options? We've exhausted all other options. We've worked collaboratively with Chafee administration, the Raimondo administration, the McKee administration, the Tavares administration, the Alorza administration. Anytime there was a different type of use for us to go out and pursue. I don't tick them off because I can't remember what NDAs I signed, and some of them are pretty heavy if you violated them. But we tried. And we never believed bringing one of those companies to downtown Providence was the best use of that building. The economic benefit direct down here wasn't as good because it's 6 o'clock, the building's empty. On Sunday, when you come down here, the Dunkin' Donuts isn't open. Why? Because there aren't enough people. Over the last 8 years, a lot of that has changed because of all the work that this council has done and all the different residential developments that you've done. Most of them didn't have any affordable component. So I think what you have here is a unique opportunity to really generate not just the construction jobs, not just the 70 or so jobs that'll be in the building, but the spin-off economy is a real thing. And one of the numbers that I came across that I thought was really striking was by doing this project, the downtown spendable income would increase between 15 and $20 million attributed to the residential activity down here. And 10 to $11 million of that would be spent right in downtown Providence, in the coffee shops, in the restaurants, in the retail stores. And those businesses, they have a hard time. Retail with no weekend economy, real hard to do. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Happy to clarify any of the information that you may have heard in opposition, some of which was not exactly accurate. If there are questions, if not, I'll turn it over to the administration.
Any questions for Mr. Heeman at this point? Thank you very much. If you just stay with us in case there are some questions. And Chief Mancini, would you take the podium and speak to this matter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So once again, I appear before the committee along with the city assessor, Janice Muscatelli, to answer any questions on the tax stabilization fiscal note. The developer, through Mr. Heeman, submitted it to the city and it was assigned to the assessor's office for review and to do a fiscal impact analysis. And certainly by about now, through the press, you've heard that over the life of this agreement, over 30 years, that the stabilized taxes or savings to the developer would approximate 29 million. Might I add that that 29 million, and I don't mean to be flippant about that, the 29 million average is less than $1 million per year over the 30 years. In my humble opinion, a sum that is well worth the investment in the downtown. The building has remained dormant for nearly 12 years. It is at the footprint of the city. The economic engine that will return to the city of Providence in this immediate era is unmeasured, but it can be measured by the businesses that went out of business, waiting for their return to the once known Industrial National Fleet Bank and the iconic Superman building. While I mentioned that it's less than $1 million a year on average, let me point out that that $1 million a year average to the developer is mostly in the early years. And the reason for that, once again, as the assessor will testify, is because we give the first several years, in this case, the first 3 years, as the ramp up base years. The city is now receiving value on $14 million. If you speak to the assessor staff, who are highly praised in the state of Rhode Island in commercial property, it's basically the land value. There is no value for that building. So at $448,000 a year that we're getting now and will continue to get in the base year is really predicated on $14 million of value. The $220 million investment of private-public partnership, state, commerce, tax credits, and city of Providence is predicated on the developer's acquisition cost and the funds that are necessary to put into the building. Once again, the appraiser, the assessors will tell you that when you're dealing with a unique property, an iconic property, a historic property, you do not get dollar for dollar rehabilitation construction value. Something that would be done at $1 may take $3 to $5 to restore it to its original historic condition. Hence, you will not see $220 million in value in this property as the construction completes. The assessor, and she's here to testify, has spent enormous amount of time reviewing this information, doing it in the phases as it was laid out in the ordinance. I want to be clear that the ordinance as presented by the developer was worked on by the City Assessor's Office in Finance. And I'm proud to say that they did a great job in identifying the terms and conditions and the various pivots within the document that changes value when value can change. One of those conditions normally is when there is a revaluation. In many times in tax stabilizations before this committee and before this council, you have learned that a tax stabilization is not a fixed instrument. It changes with the value. Why is that important? Because we track value during the life of the agreement so that the day when the true value arrives, we have kept a record of value changes throughout the life of the agreement. That's an important consideration. And that consideration is embedded in this agreement. So with that, Madam Chair, members of the committee and members of the council, well, we can speak in greater detail. I think it's important that the committee know that, and we are prepared to give further detail as I have the assessor and her deputy along with the finance director with us this evening.
Thank you. Are you okay, Councilman Anthony?
I would like to ask some questions of Mr. Mancini.
Please.
So I do appreciate that explanation. So you're saying the assessment estimate is not necessarily what it's going to be based on the reval, correct? So it's just an estimate. But I guess my question is, so here we are talking about the overall deal and that it's a $30 million stabilized tax amount. But that's based on these assessments that you've provided today, correct?
That's correct.
And so I'm wondering, I just don't understand when we have completion year is year 5, that these incremental estimates are so incredibly low. I mean, and even using the 2%, that doesn't make any sense to me because the project is going to be completed and I presumably occupied in some capacity. And so I have no idea why it's only a 2% increase on the estimate, because really, I don't think this is an accurate chart.
So, Madam Councilwoman, if you would permit me the opportunity to ask our resident appraiser, the assessor, to explain to you how base values are determined. As I said earlier, land only in this case, because it's a non-functioning property, but also we had to arrive at comparable values. The assessor will explain to you how that worked and which buildings we use as a comp and how we arrived at that starting value, if you may.
Please. And could you speak into the microphone? You folks are going back and forth and it's hard to hear you.
Could you hear me?
Yes. Please speak into the microphone.
Sure. With this property in particular, we had 3 major sales in the last year of somewhat comparable apartment complexes. We used those 3 sales and came up with the average price per unit based off of that. I could share with you some of those sales. One of them was the Halstead building that sold for around 40 million. And the average price per unit there was 172,000. We had another sale at the Avalon. That sale was 50 million, which was equal to 221,000 per unit. And then Rising Sun sold for 27 million, which was equal to around 186,000 per unit. The median sale price there was around 190, which is what we use to comp out the Superman building project. 190,000 times 285 units. That was the completed value we came up with for the estimated time frame of 5 years of completion. Maybe it will be completed sooner or later, but the best we could do is use the comps that we had available to us.
Thank you. Are you okay with that, Councilwoman
No.
Anthony?
No.
You
so
have
the
another
com-
question?
Yes, please.
Councilwoman
So the
Anthony?
comps you used were 3 comps from last year. I'm sorry. And that's how you came up with the ones, you know, the per unit, 190K per unit. But I'm sorry. And so how does that, so that is how you came up with the estimate, current estimate, or I'm not
Correct.
sure.
That's correct, the current
Okay.
estimate. And then to go back to the explanation on the Hive, over a 15-year period, it was an average of 2% assessment change over 15 years of historical data. So I stuck with the same method.
Okay, 2% again. And so occupancy or changing, you know, the occupancy in the building, that doesn't have anything else to do with it.
No, I don't have any of that information. This is strictly just on comparable market value.
All right. I appreciate that. I do have another question for Mr. Mancini.
Any other council members at this point? Councilman Anthony, please continue.
So, Mr. Mancini, I think we heard from Rhode Island Commerce that the pro forma, I believe, was predicated on a TSA from the city. Is that correct?
I testified that the analysis that was provided by our finance department and the city assessor's office was based on the conditions located, the conditions that are contained inside the TSA, which was prepared by representatives of the developer, yes.
Okay, so I'm just wondering why it is that we as council who have to make a decision on this TSA haven't been provided with a copy of the pro forma.
Could you repeat the question? I don't.
Yes, I'm wondering why we as members of council have not had a copy of the agreement when the deal was put together by Commerce, State, and the city, you know, in terms of the financing package, why we haven't received a copy of I guess it's the pro forma, correct?
So, Madam Councilwoman, the administration was not technically involved in those negotiations. We were the last to receive the documents after all of the preliminary state and tax credit and commerce negotiations existed, because without getting those negotiations intact, there would not have been an opportunity for the city to participate. The city's participation was meant to be, in the case of the $5 million that would turn into a grant upon completion and upon certificate of occupancy, and only then. And of course, any incentive that would be provided by a tax stabilization agreement, again, because the property has been dormant for better than 10 years. It is not performing, it's not functioning. There is no income and expense analysis that would support a higher value. It basically is supported by today what the land value would be. And so hence, we're not losing anything more than what we already have. We're already collecting $458,000 or $448,000 per year in taxes on that $14 million in value. When we received it from the developers representatives, we did analyze it, and I believe more than 3 weeks ago, we submitted a fiscal note to the city clerk to be discussed for the city council.
Okay, thank you. One final question.
Please continue, Councilwoman
On the
Anthony.
Providence Housing Trust Fund loan for the 10 million, can you remind me the terms of that loan?
So I'm not intimately familiar with that. Perhaps the developer could speak to that. Are you referring to the loan that they're seeking, or?
No, it says is for some of the funding sources, the Providence Housing Trust Fund is.
Yeah,
that a
perhaps
city?
Mr. Heeman could just give us some background on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Heeman?
So that, again, not my end of the business is the loan documents, but it's a loan from an existing program that I understand it, administered by the Providence Redevelopment Agency. So the discussions there, I believe, were through Planning Department, Providence Redevelopment Agency. It's not finalized, just the fact that there would be a $10 million loan. The duration, I believe, is 30 or 40 years. It's a low interest loan. It is given a certain lower priority in the capital stack, because obviously the bank that has to write the check for 115 million won't do that if there's if they don't have the top priority in the capital stack, or the lending tree there. But I don't know the exact details of it, other than that it was an existing program through the PRA. The loan documents have not been finalized. We stay away from that quite a bit because our office does work for the PRA. So we've tried not to be too intimately involved in every detail of that.
Sorry, I have 2 more questions.
Don't be sorry.
I
What
don't
is your
mean to
question?
hog the time, but
It's
I,
okay. What are your questions?
Is
Please
there a
continue.
construction guarantee in this, anywhere in this deal so that there
So-
has to be a guarantee that the construction is completed?
I don't believe there's a completion guarantee in this one. In some of the other times.
Please
that we-
speak into the
in some of the
microphone,
other
sir.
different projects, like the other proposals we've tried to do over the years, there were times where we did that, where we had offered to do a completion guarantee. We don't have that here because we don't get the benefits associated with the state or the federal, the 40 million that we're getting from state and federal until we get the CO. So we don't get any of the incentives. Now, the TSA is important, obviously. That's over a long period of time of money we don't have to spend. But the money that we have to take in, the tax credits, historic tax credits, Rebuild Rhode Island, First Wave Fund, we don't get that without the certificate of occupancy.
Okay, and I have
Anything further?
just one question for legal.
Certainly. What is it?
I know that Senator Bell mentioned the fact that we weren't authorized to issue a 30-year TSA. So I thought we had the authorization. If I'm not, I just want to confirm with someone that we have the authorization to do a 30-year TSA.
Solicitor?
There's a reason you're not allowed to practice law without a license, and that's one of them. Had he pointed it to you, he would have said that pursuant to 44-3-9, subsection H, this body is empowered to do just what you're being asked to do, which is to grant a 30-year tax stabilization agreement to this property. Originally, the legislation was statewide. Any council could do it if they wanted to. Not that you had to, not that your ability to say, no, we're not doing it, it's constrained in any way. But this law was signed by the governor on June 27th, 2022.
So that's the enabling legislation. Did we do what we needed to do on council?
So thank you very much for trying to answer that question. Solicitor Chiaverini, can you please respond to? Thank you very much.
So
Councilman
question is,
Anthony?
I just didn't know if we had to pass an ordinance then or something at the city level to enable us to do that, since we have enabling legislation.
I think the TSA that you pass is in response or part of the legislation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Goncalves?
Thanks, Chairwoman. So I have just a couple of comments here. I think for everyone's edification, I think it's important for folks to know what skin in the game the city has in this project. There were lots of negotiations that happened up at the State House, and I just want to make sure I have my numbers correct. So is it true that the 2.2% of the expected funding sources are actually coming from the city? That's a question for council or
Who would you like
for
to
finance.
answer? Who would like to
Yeah,
field
you can
that?
take that.
So I
Mr. Heyman?
don't know the percentage breakdown. The city's end of the public-private partnership would be the $10 million loan from the PRA, which isn't the city, but is the city. The $5 million grant, which also isn't paid until completion. And then the fiscal note would indicate to you what the tax savings would be over the 30-year period, which is, 29 million or so.
So not everybody on the council was involved in that process, but it's clear that, what the city is contributing is minimal skin in the game. It's quite modest in comparison to what the state is providing to this project, as well as the federal tax credits. So I think that's something that folks need to recognize here. This is creating 1,600 direct construction jobs to the city. I think also the commitments to both the affordable housing component, so literally doubling the requirement of the current TSA ordinance, and also doubling the commitment to women and minority-owned businesses. So I think, a lot of this was predicated on, the potential of a tax stabilization agreement. So I just think that's very important to acknowledge. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
No, I mean, I think it's a good point. This is the critical component, though. None of it works without this. I don't like to say anyone contributed any less than anyone else, everyone stepping up to the plate here in different ways, but I agree, it took a lot to do this. One other thing I forgot to say before is part of the 57 units that are being deed restricted, part of our obligation there as well that we've agreed with Rhode Island Housing and with Commerce is we're going to market those directly to residents of Providence. Now, we can't say you can't come from Woonsocket or Pawtucket or Smithfield, but we've undertaken an affirmative obligation, whether it be through working with an agency, whether it be working with Providence Housing Authority, to make sure that the availability of those 57 units are available and are pushed out to Providence residents. So it is a benefit direct to the city. That's something I forgot to mention.
How are
before.
you, are they deed restricted units? So they stay,
There'll be a restrictive covenant recorded.
so they stay with the development?
Yep.
Do you know how long they stay? Is it a
I think
30
it's
year?
a 30-year restrictive covenant, but we've also, one of the substitutions in the sub A is to say that even after the TSA has expired, this project does not become eligible to take advantage of the 8% law. So the extent of the tax benefit is right here. We can't shift gears later on down the road if that became more attractive, or after this is over, say, oh, great, now we'll take advantage of the 8% law. We are restricted from doing that. It'd be retroactive revocation if we do.
Thank you. Have we heard from Rhode Island Housing? I know that they didn't come here, and I think we heard a lot of testimony about how important affordable housing is. Could you
So they
just help the committee out by
Sure.
explaining a little bit or fleshing it out a little bit more, how that's going to work? I know they're deed restricted, but there's 10% affordable housing commitment, which is a big
20.
amount. 20%. So please explain that, flesh that out for us.
Sure. So that's the entity that we'll execute the covenant with. It'll be recorded in land evidence. They don't make it a habit of coming out and testifying in public hearings. I guess they have a policy against doing that. But as part of what was approved by Commerce and our state incentives is all predicated on us entering into that covenant. We can't get any of those funds if we don't. I believe we get $1 million in funding from Rhode Island Housing as part of our financing. None of that can be obtained and can be clawed back if we didn't honor the restricted covenant. That's still in the drafting stage, but our approvals for our rebuild credits are tied
Predicated
to
on
that.
that. Councilman Goncalves.
And I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on the guardrails, because I think that's also critically important here. I remember looking at the rate sheet, and part of that agreement also was that no more than 91 of the units could go to an institutional partner. I think that's important. I mean, we talk a lot about these large tax exempt institutions coming in and swooping these properties up. We saw it with the River House in Ward 1. And I've been intimately, aware of what's going on here because this project is in Ward 1. It's in downtown. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that? I feel like not everyone knows about that. It's important.
Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, we got beat up pretty good in our negotiations. I mean, obviously, every developer's goal is to make something nice that makes money. And you throw out this incentive here and this incentive there, but you get beat up. We don't even get to the fact that this will be 1.3 million to the council's Parks and Rec Fund that you have TSAs. To a nonprofit, RISD, if they were inclined to dip into that endowment a bit. Whether they called us up and said, hey, we don't have enough housing for our students and we need to rent X number of apartments. You know, we're restricted from doing that directly. So they really perhaps benefited from the fact that the Secretary of Commerce was running for office at the time and wanted to have all these different things he could tell you how bad he beat us up on. But the deal from the taxpayer side of the equation benefited greatly, So much so that perhaps if this was the first year of ownership, we may not have taken it. But we've been doing this for 10 years. When I got hired to work on this project, I wasn't married, I wasn't a lawyer, and I had no children. That's how different life is in this last time someone was actually involved in occupying that building for productive use. So we got beat up good. I don't mind telling you that. The person who was responsible for it might be more embarrassed to say it, but there are plenty of safeguards. Any breach results in the loss of a benefit. Any non-compliance results in having to pay back money. The only other thing I would add is we start from the assumption, because there is a fiscal note, right? There's what would you pay if you had the building at $57 million with no TSA? And you have to look at it that way. But the reality is, to go back to what Mr. Mancini said, is we pay on 14 million. From our perspective, for many years, we didn't pay on 14 million because we thought that was the value. If you go way back, we had an appraisal from Peter Scotti, hard to find a more respected appraiser than Peter Scotti, that said we should be paying on 0. And we filed appeals, and then we agreed, for everybody's benefit, that we keep it at a different number. And so it was 14 and then 15, so on and so forth. But that was in the hope of getting to a point like this, where we had a development deal. So if we don't have it, there's no guarantee it would even remain at that level. Because at this point, what other options do we have? For one of the nonprofits to come in and take it? We've had people try to buy the building. You could sell it to them. They'll be right here asking for something similar. Could take it by eminent domain, write a check for 45 million when you do that. So this is the best option. We've turned over every stone. And for my client, I will say this. We talk about out-of-state developers. We talk about people who come in and they get involved in projects and they want taxpayers' money and they won't just build it on their own, go to a bank and get a loan. David Sweetser bought this building for $30 million. Shortly thereafter, his only tenant told him they were leaving. What did he do? Paid the mortgage. He did that to show his commitment to stay here. Over the years, as you might imagine, it gets frustrating that we couldn't get a deal done. Didn't board the building up, put scaffolding out there because the exterior of the structure is in such a condition that we have scaffolding there to prevent pieces of the building from falling off and hitting people in the street. So the only eyesore there is there for safety. Whenever he was asked to make the building available, he made it available. Whenever he was asked to turn it on so we could pretend something was happening there, because that's how embarrassing it was for all of us to have our big building empty like this. He turned the beacon on, he turned the light on. And he's made, while he's asked for significant partnership, he has given of his own side of the ledger just the same. And he's got a big commitment here. He's putting in another 20 million in cash. Unlike some other deals, when there's not enough money, he's gonna put another 11 in. And then we act like he doesn't have to pay back 115 million in construction loans. So there's a lot here. There's a lot here. And, you know, I get paid to stand here, obviously, but enough of you have known me long enough to know that I wouldn't stand here for any amount of money for a deal that I wouldn't be proud to stand in front of. And this is one that if this is the last one I do, I'm glad it's the last one I do.
Thank you. Committee members, Councilman Anthony?
Yes, the document to which you're referring where the restrictions are, what is that document?
Which restrictions?
We were talking about the restriction not being able to rent to an institution, a block.
So those are all contained in the different commerce approvals.
And we haven't seen those, so I'm just wondering why that is.
Well, they're not, I mean.
Are they public?
A lot of what they do is public. I don't appear before Commerce myself, but they are a public agency. So I would imagine whatever they approved became public when they approved it. But I mean, Councilman Gonkovs isn't a detective and he found it, so it must be somewhere. But as far as I know, whatever, I mean, Commerce, their board has to apply by the same levels of transparency as you do. So if they approved it, it was approved in open session, it should be publicly available. Why they wouldn't be here is, you know, they're not exactly germane to the four corners of a tax stabilization.
Well, I would say that when we're going to do a tax stabilization for 30 million, it is germane to what we're doing here.
Well, I mean, that's fine, but
And then the
again,
last
they
question
don't-
I have.
They don't have,
And then the next question is the public amenities too. No one spoke about that tonight. So the public is asking, you know, I know we had a lot of talk about affordability of the units, but there is supposed to be public space in this building
Sure.
and not one person spoke about that tonight.
so the banking hall will be a source. That's where the public amenity will be. And we have been thinking of a lot of different forms which that would take shape. There's an idea of perhaps a museum space there. Again, not something we're looking to make any money on. There's an idea of just having it openly available for event space. Not something we're looking to make any money on. The public use has not yet been fully defined, other than that grand banking hall would be where it takes place. That's the lure of the building. Quite honestly, it is very hard to utilize that space for retail and things along that line, because again, our construction has to be approved by the federal government because of our historic tax credits. But the idea is that will be a place where all the people of Providence, all the people of Rhode Island will be able to enjoy that space. And it is not intended to be a source of financial gain for the developer.
Thank you.
Just one last question. What's the construction timeline on this?
22 months.
22 months. Yeah, I'm going to just share my opinion on this very quickly. I think this is going to sound very parochial, as I am, the council person for this ward, but I think, the 2.2% of expected funding sources that are coming from the city, again, that's very minimal. There's a lot of guardrails here, including the certificate of occupancy, and the numbers are pretty clear. This is estimated to create 1,600 direct construction jobs. It's going to increase the state's GDP by 166 million during the construction phase. I like the provision that prohibits no more than 91 of units being sold off to an institutional partner. The fact that this is going to create 285 residential units downtown with 20%, not just 10%, but 20% of those units being permanently deed restricted to match the state's definition of affordable housing, and 20% of this project going towards local minority and women-owned businesses. I think those are huge wins for us to consider as a city. And ultimately, this is going to stimulate our local economy. It's really going to revitalize downtown and further, build this growing, vibrant residential and commercial neighborhood. So I just wanted to state my opinion on this for the record. I think the alternative is that the building is vacant for another 10 years, and that's not a good option for the city of Providence. So, I urge my colleagues to really consider this one.
Thank you very much. Well said, Councilman Gonkovs. Anyone else, committee members, council members, other thoughts, questions, concerns? I would just like to personally say, as a woman who has worked downtown in the financial district my entire professional career, it has been a black eye to the downtown area. And I listened to a number of people who spoke about how it has really pulled down the vibrancy, the economy for our city. And I'm absolutely thrilled that it's been vacant for 10 years. It's exciting to see all of the hard work that's gone into this at all levels of government. and the layers of subsidies, has multiple agreements and hoops and hurdles and controls and guidance, and everything appears to be in place. I just appreciate the presentation that was made today. I think it was, we crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is. With that, I would like to entertain a motion to recommend approval. Motion. Recommend approval as amended. That motion is made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. Any, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The matter passes. It is recommended for a full council approval. It will appear before the council at the next meeting. Thank you all. Motion to adjourn made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Narducci. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.